or good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Richard Sampson, and it's my job to introduce this evening's session, to welcome you to another session of our translation capsules. These are open online talks between translation and interpreting specialists and members of our Department of Translation, Interpreting and Applied Languages, members of our team at the University of Vic, Central University of Catalonia. And today we have the pleasure of counting on the presence of Ania Jankowska of the University of Antwerp. Antwerp is one of those interesting places which has a completely different name in Spanish, Amberes, which is a nice quiz question for our interpreting or translation students. The University of Antwerp, where she leads the Open Expertise Center for Accessible Media and Culture. She also works at the Jagiellonian, I hope I say that right, Jagiellonian University of Krakow, which is the oldest university in Poland and is part of the historic center of Krakow, which is a World Heritage Site. So that must be marvelous. And Ania will be in conversation with us here this evening with our colleague in the department, Floriane Bardini. Now, before we start, I just need to make a name check of some of the organizations that have promoted this activity. That's iDisc, Tech for Word, Pen Català, Elmo Editorial, the Institut Ramon Llull, and the Spanish Association of Conference Interpreters. And lastly, APAC, the Association of English Teachers of Catalonia. So thanks to all of you for joining us. If you want to follow us on Twitter or other social networks, our hashtag is #ConversaTrad. And if you have questions for Ania, please write them in the chat and we'll pick them up. And if she hasn't answered them, we'll pass them to Floriane and Ania at the end of the session. And also bear in mind that these talks, a slightly edited version of these talks will appear soon afterwards on our YouTube channel, where you can follow, you can view all our back catalogue. I think this is the 10th or 11th season of these sessions, which started during the confinement of COVID-19 and have continued ever since then. So take a look at the back catalogue or take a look at Ania and Floriane again after today if you want to have another look. Well, Floriane, over to you.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Ania, for joining us for this talk. I'm really glad that you accepted our invitation. And as Richard said, you're an associate research professor at the University of Antwerp, where you manage the Open Expertise Center for Accessible Media and Culture. So you're specializing in accessibility research and teaching. You also established and ran the Seven Sense Foundation in Poland, where you worked providing access services and building awareness on accessibility. You collaborated with several research groups, among them Transmedia Catalonia in Barcelona, or the ABT Lab in the University of Warsaw. You really have this multifaceted background of this kind of perfect balance between practice and teaching and research. And I really would like you to share with us a bit more about that, about how you manage all these hats of yours and how they intertwine in your daily practice.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's really an honor. I have to say I'm a bit stressed. There's no PowerPoint, no preparation, but I'll do my best. I think the best word is that there's no balance, because indeed I do manage quite a bit of hats. I'm very happy to be in Antwerp. I came here 5 years ago, and actually Open Expertise Center on Accessible Media and Culture existed already. It was created by Professor Aline Remael, and we are a trio. We manage it together with Nina Riviers and Gert Verkouteren. which helps, and that's why I wanted to be in Antwerp, to actually be embedded in a team that does research on accessibility. And we are now 11, counting all the PhDs and postdocs who work with us on accessibility.
What now? What are you working on right now? What are the hot topics in accessibility research in Antwerp?
That's a good question. We currently do a couple of things at the same time because indeed we are 11. So we branched out. We are still very much interested in practice because both Nina and Gert are also practicing access experts and describers. So we have this very apply strain where I also try to contribute as much as possible in Belgium, but also in Poland when we work on access in practice by providing access services or consulting or auditing or advising institutions on how to implement access. We also teach. We have a specialization in Antwerp, which is an MA in accessible communication and culture. And as of this year, it was the first year when it officially started. So we still teach audio description and we'll still teach SDH, but we also teach access management. And this is something I also teach in Poland because, as the title of our talk says, access is an ecosystem. So yes, you have to provide audio description. Yes, you have to provide enhanced subtitling. Yes, you have to provide sign language interpreting, but you also have to manage access for an event from A to Z, which is from booking to transportation and follow up with the participants. So we also teach this and try to help organizations to practice this. But we also have a couple of projects that are more fundamental research on audio description. We have 2 students who are looking into inside of the heads of the describers. So what happens when they describe and then they use eye tracking and keylogging to answer more fundamental questions about our cognition and our thought processes that happen when we describe.
So how we look at films to then transmit their contents of images, or how. So it's more about how sighted people here get into interpreting the film and transmitting the meaning, or in this part and this fundamental research part, or.
Yes, this is a bit more into following cognitive translation studies. So they try to figure out what happens in the mind of the interpreter. We try to understand what happens in the mind of the describer, how cognitively demanding the task of describing is. But we are also interested in, we all say audio description is a type of translation, which kind of makes sense. We are translation scholars. But we also want to unpack this. We want to see, is it really the same process in your head? Is it really similar to translation? We have talked with some describers who told us they are, I think in Spain it's quite similar as in Poland, and in Belgium that describers are usually trained as translators as well. But if you look at the US or the UK, not necessarily so. So some of the describers already told us they never considered themselves a translator until we came and told them they were translators. Or we have some describers who told us, yeah, I'm a translator as well, but when I audio describe, my brain is wired differently. So we are interested in this part. So what happens in their brain when they describe, how is it different from translating or writing? But it's also a research choice. I'm sure if someone here is joining us as a researcher, you have to wear multiple hats with the fundamental research and more applied research. So we try to do a bit of everything.
Definitely, these will be some interesting answers, and it's true that we have this common view. It is translating images into words. In a way, it is, but it's limiting, and so it's good to explore what goes on in other ways, and especially this complex brain processes. And to go back to accessibility as an ecosystem, for a few 2 decades now, there has been more and more research, more and more practice. I think it's also the laws that force accessibility to be implemented in different settings. But it's interesting the way you go about it, saying accessibility as an ecosystem and not in a way as a box to tick, to say, okay, the law requires accessibility, I will make my product accessible. But it's really kind of limiting to this, looking at it like that. And how do you go about making something really accessible? For example, if you have an exhibit in a museum, you want to prepare an exhibit, paint exhibit, and how do you go about making this really accessible to people with sensorial disabilities?
Sure. I'm going to share with you a unsuccess story or a failure story, because I think especially if you study and then if you get into accessibility in practice, for most people it's a passion, and you kind of feel how can somebody think that accessibility is not worth it, right? It's obviously worth it. And when we started with Access in Poland, I first started on a PhD on accessibility. And then with my first MA students who wanted to do their MA on audio description, we created the Seventh Sense Foundation to actually do accessibility in practice. And one of the first events we worked on was a film music festival, which happens always in May. It's actually happening this May again with audio description, but that was 2012, I think. And 2011, sorry, that was a film festival in Krakow. And we provided audio description. We worked until 4 a.m. In our interpreting booths at the university to record everything, to have it ready. We did this big PR campaign, with local media, with local institutions. And then the festival started. And do you know how many blind people came to see the film with audio description? Zero.
Zero.
Zero. There was nobody. There was there was one person. And when he left, he said, yeah, I didn't really like it. And we went like, okay, fine. And then a year later, we worked on a festival again. And this time, there were 4 people who came. And they only came because we have bought the tickets for them. And we realized when they came, this festival it's a film music festival. And they have a screening of a film with the score being played by the orchestra. And it does not take place in the Philharmony. It takes place in a factory, which is a bit outside of Krakow. It's still the town, but it's not the center. You have to take the tram. Then from the tram, there will be shuttle buses that would take you inside the factory for the show. And the show would finish after midnight. So there was no public transport. I mean, there was public transport back, but in Krakow, works differently than during the day. You have different stops than normally. And then we realized that for the 4 people that wanted to come, it was just a nightmare. There was no way they could get inside. There was no way they could get out. So the very last moment, we took my very old Volkswagen Polo, and we just drove them from the main station in Krakow to the venue, to inside of the factory and back home. And it worked, and we are actually still friends with the 4 people who came, and they are quite active in accessibility. But yes, I think 15 years ago that was okay. Today that would be really bad management and really bad organization. And actually with this event, we realized it's not enough to just provide access to content. The audio description for that film was very important, of course, otherwise the people with a visual impairment could not come to see the film with everyone, but it was not enough. And then we realized that access has to happen. It has to start way before the event. and then it has to continue way after the event is finished, including building a community around it and also building your audiences for future events. So now we know that if you want to make an accessible event, if it's a museum, there has to be accessible information about it first. Then you need to have accessible ticketing, for example. If you look at the websites that allow you to book tickets, very often those websites are not accessible. So it's not that you just ask people who are blind to book a ticket to the cinema or to the theater or to the museum. If your website is not accessible, if your booking is not accessible, they will not come. Why would they? Then you have the content, of course, on place. There has to be audio description, there has to be SDH, but after the event is finished, you also have to think about that. When does it finish? Is there a way for people to get back home? If not, you should inform them about it, right? That the event will finish. When you look at the websites of the events, very often they have the starting time, but the ending time is very rarely mentioned. So people can't really prepare themselves for how to manage after. So it is an entire ecosystem of how do you communicate about accessibility and how do you build your audience. And it's it happens quite often from people who start with accessibility that you have very high hopes. You know, we would expect the entire Krakow to just come running because there was the first film with audio description. Why would they? You know, it was a niche film festival. Maybe they were not interested in the content in the first place. That's also possible, and that's also fine. So there is, for me, it's, I think right now it's called, there's an article about Pablo Romero Fresco, and it's referred to as the access chain. It's a chain of events, chain of things that you need to remember and manage to actually create an accessible experience, I think.
Yeah, thank you for raising all these aspects. It's true that I've seen that too, going to an audio describe function because I wanted to see it with audio description, but there were no blind persons. There is, in this case, the physical access to the venues is really fundamental, and that brings us, I think, to users' needs, because this is clearly one of the users' needs. They don't only need audio description; they need to be able to come along and share this cultural experience with the rest of the audience. And how can we go about this inclusion of users? I think it's twofold there. You can start on which side you want, but I think one thing is the inclusion of users within the community that wants to enjoy a cultural event or an exhibit or any other element. And then there is the inclusion of users in the design, in the very design of accessibility solutions. And how is that managed currently with by cultural venues and organization?
Oh, that's a very big topic, and I think it's there's a number of things. We could even start from research, right? So we could look at all sorts of participatory approaches. If you look at the research, at the beginning, especially, we used to create a solution and then go to test it with users. The idea is not to include users as testers when you're done, but actually ask them first what is it that they need and include them in the design of the research. And it really transfers to practice as well. More and more organizations, especially if they're NGOs, they are very often either disability-led organizations or disability co-led organizations. Or you can call it like self-advocates as well. It's very important. Right now in audio description, for example, in the creation of audio description, there is a debate going on about who should create audio description. Should it be sighted people for the blind people, or should blind describers be involved as well. And there are some lovely projects, some lovely examples of blind describers working on audio description, whereas where they have the support of sighted describers, but it is the blind describers who decide in the end what is going to be included in audio description and how. This is still, of course, a niche thing, but for me, the lowest threshold is to have a blind consultant when you write a description. They also, of course, they have to be trained in audio description. They also have to be experts in what they do. But at least in the Seventh Sense Foundation, that's what we tried to do, and a lot of Polish NGOs, they do it as well. We always worked with a blind consultant who would read the script and provide the feedback. And actually, a lot of institutions in Poland do it right now. You mentioned museums. I was in the National Museum in Krakow in February, and there was a temporary exhibition with audio description for selected pictures. It was a painting exhibition, and every description was co-created by a blind expert as well. So it was always a duo, and I think that's the way to go. It is more expensive, true. Especially if you work for the streaming platforms. The cost is an issue there, and it's more expensive when you have two people working on something than if you have one. But there are also great examples of blind-led description within the providers for the streaming platforms. There are now providers who employ blind people as describers, for example.
So this is really going forward. I mean, in Spain, now museum have to have an accessibility plan. So it's moving a lot in this area, and all live events, museum, they go about accessibility more seriously, and there it is also good practice to include user associations. But actually, for the creation of single audio description of film for platforms or television, it is still the practice that one-sighted describer does the describing alone. So here there is a bit of progress to be done, and maybe we will need some laws to impose this way of working, which actually in 2026 seems the only way to go.
I agree.
And
because otherwise we would do something that if you look at disability models, you have something that is called the charity model of disability, and access is not charity and shouldn't be, right? So
yeah, and about it is not charity, and it is more about inclusion. I think about the society being one together and access being actually good for all, even if you don't need it. Maybe it's good for you that it's there anyway, and that it's possible to build an inclusive society where people can share together the cultural experiences. Yeah. And have you some experiences of successful mixing of practices that includes the diverse public?
Yeah, there are, again, a lot of things to unpack here, but I just want to take one step back about inclusion. I think very often when we think about access, we talk about autonomy. We also tackled, we touched upon it last time we spoke. And then, for example, we were involved in a couple of projects in which we designed apps for access, right? So an app for the cinema, or the app for a museum, where if you need audio description, you can just take your phone and go, and you're guided through the museum, or you just go to the cinema and you play audio description to the film. And I do support this. I think it's important to give autonomy. But even back then, when we talked with users who tested the app, one of them told us for the museum, technology should not replace a person. So he is a very autonomous person, yet still you go to a museum, you go to the theater, you go to the cinema, not only to see the film, it's usually a social experience. So what I really like, and I see this in Poland, I don't know how it works in Spain actually, but apart from apps that now function in the cinema where you can just go and use the app and have the audio description. It's not so super common, but it happens. Or sometimes you have cinemas that have headsets and you can just, rent them and go to the cinema for whatever show at whatever hour you want. And that's perfect because that gives freedom. But a lot of NGOs and a lot of cultural institutions would still do planned screenings with accessibility. And at the first thought, you go like, oh, wow, but that's not really inclusion, right? We do this separate screening with audio description. But they never say it's separate screening with audio description. The screening is open for everyone. So, you want to have the AD, you have the AD, but you don't have to use it. And when I talk, there's a foundation in Wrocław, they're called Katarynka, and their president Mariusz, he always says, I'm so amazed when we have this screening, which is every month on a Thursday, our room in the cinema is completely full, and the screening room next door, there's like one person, right? And then I think we don't have to throw away those organized special screenings, because I think it works for two reasons. People want to experience culture with other people, not necessarily always alone. So it's important you actually create a social, accessible experience. There are usually screenings, and there is like a talk after, or a meeting with the cast, or a meeting with a film critic, and a discussion. And then on the other hand, for some people, it also feels safer to come to a place when they know they will be they want to be on their own, that there is someone waiting for them there to provide assistance if needed. So I think you can do inclusion also in that way. It doesn't mean that inclusion does not mean that you have to mingle in the general experience. You can create an accessible moment, and everyone is invited. And it's also a very nice way forward. It's not, I'm a fan of those special accessible screenings, I have to say.
Yeah, exactly, because it goes two ways. It's a special screening. There will be special care for the blind persons, but it's not a closed screen.
No.
And that's what makes it inclusion and a shared experience, as well as.
Yeah, and I was going to say it actually, because you mentioned museums, it actually works very well in museums as well, that you would have guided tour with audio description, and they are actually quite attractive for people who are sighted. Because, especially with modern art, you sometimes, it doesn't have to be modern art, any art. You look at a painting and you don't really know what you're looking at. And if someone explains to you what you're looking at, what's the meaning of the image, it's audio description, yes, but it also can benefit people who are sighted. And then I don't remember the name of the guy, but he's from the US. And that's what he said. He actually realized that people join his tours, even though they were for the blind. So he started to design them in a way that they can benefit those who are sighted and those who do not see at the same time.
I'm not surprised that it works, because it's when you are discovering something that you have to get knowledge about, you want to really grasp the meaning, the information, the history. It's good to have somebody guiding your gaze to what is important. Exactly. And what is explained right now, because otherwise you can just get lost in description. And I'm not surprised that it's liked by other people, and it's good practice, I think, to design them from the beginning as really inclusive guided tours. That's great.
Exactly. There is a famous saying, design for disability, design for all. And then it can work.
Yeah.
Though, to not be so on a pink cloud and optimistic, we also talk in Poland, there is a law that requires all public institutions to have an access coordinator. So it's been a couple of years now that every public institution has an access coordinator, and there has been some studies done with them, some talks. And they did mention the last time we had a focus group that they are painfully aware, which is a good thing, that it's not possible to do accessible for all. So they try not to do it anymore because it's also stigmatizing, because you say, like, this is accessible for all, but you have someone who comes in and says, yeah, not really for me. Not yet. But what is also important, and it's a good practical tip, is not all target groups will work well together. Sometimes people with different needs, the needs are a bit, I would say, mutually exclusive. So they realize in their daily practice that you have to be very clear about what are you going to make accessible, and then people can choose whether that will be disturbing for them or not. And not all groups go well together.
I think this is really, you've touched on a fundamental issue here, is that you need to know your public. And if as a non-disabled accessibility coordinator, what you have to do is get in contact with associations, get knowledge about your possible public to really, like the great solution that you have explained before. It is possible, it works perfect, but also design moments, special tools, special solution, and really have a diversity of solutions. Some will be for more people, some for less, but it's actually a really complex practice.
I agree. You need to know your public, and I think with the technology that we have now, I'm looking at the chat and I saw a question about AI and technical things. I think the good in it is it allows for personalization in a very easy way. And to give you an example of groups that would not necessarily work together, when you provide audio description for the museum, you could also add, and some museums do it, and it's really nice, soundscape, right? That you are in a museum, you listen to the audio description, but you also have sounds from the period or from the picture and so on. And I was actually in the Royal Museum in Antwerp a couple of weeks ago, and in one room they had music, and I realized, it's much nicer for me to experience museum with music. I actually could focus better. But then if you think about the audio guide for someone who is a neurodiverse person, this additional soundscape can be just awful. It's more information that you need to process. So ideally, on the tablet or on the phone or whatever device you're using, you should provide both options. Audio description with soundscape, but also audio description without the soundscape. Also because if someone is losing their hearing, the soundscape is an annoying buzz in the background that doesn't allow them to hear the description very well. So that's what I meant, that some needs are, they exclude each other mutually. And then we should be allowing to personalize and for people to choose what they prefer in access.
Yeah, that's luckily we have technology that helps with that. I'm glad that you gave this example to really illustrate some of the incompatible solutions, but it's as you said, it has an easy solution with technology. Maybe if you started answering questions. I don't see the questions, but maybe if we have some more questions, we can start addressing the questions.
Shall I come in then? Shall I come in, Floriane? Because I've been following the questions. I can tell you about them.
Yeah.
Can I ask about why the Seventh Sense Foundation and what's the Sixth Sense? We really wanted to call the foundation the Sixth Sense, but there was this fantastic thriller with Bruce Willis, which was called The Sixth Sense. And we did not want to be named after a thriller about a dead boy who sees ghosts. So that's why we went for The Seventh Sense.
Good job. Well, thank you, thank you, Ania. We're moving then into the final segment of this conversation. Thank you to Floriane, and thank you to you. I think it's been inspiring, really, to listen to your very empathetic and wide-ranging experience in this field. You know, it's marvelous. We've got some other questions here. You didn't go much into the legal aspects. I think that in universities in Spain, I mentioned this to Floriane the other day, I think that the universities, we have an obligation to make everything accessible, but there have been no fines in Spain in the higher education sector so far. And until unfortunately, in Spain, in other countries, I suppose as well, until there are fines, people don't take it seriously. What's your experience? Is that the same in Belgium and in Poland? Are they fining universities?
Yeah. As far as I know, there are no fines. And one of our team members has done an audit on the websites of the EU and of Poland, of the public institutions. Are those accessible for people with a visual impairment? And they are not. And there's also a lot of issues about how countries actually report back to the EU on their accessibility. But I think I want to go back to what you say about being empathic or empathetic. I don't know how you say it in English. But I just don't think fines will do it, because then we will move to access as compliance. And then, you know, when I hear compliance, I hear before Poland joined the EU, there was all this stuff, we'll join the EU and all the cucumbers will have to be 50 centimeters and all the bananas will have to be straight, not curved. And I would not like for this happen to access. So I do understand, we obviously need regulations and laws. We do need compliance and that should be monitored. But I think we also need a lot of accessibility, awareness raising, and just also empathy. If you allow yourself to think that there's such a big diversity in the world and that we experience the world in so many different ways. My experience has been like, if we went somewhere and tried to convince a theater to be accessible, they usually would go like, at the beginning. But if you had one person who believed in access, if you had one person who has met a person who needs audio description or SDH, it would just go forward. They would stop seeing this as compliance. The same for television. As long as they saw providing AD as compliance, they would provide audio description for the news. I mean, what do you need to audio describe in news or in a talk show? He walked in, she walked out. I mean, that's it. The moment you had someone who believed in access, that would change. They would know it's not something that, you know, an EU clerk has invented in a dark, dark, dark room at the end of a dark, dark, dark office in Brussels, but they know it's something that makes sense to so many people. Yeah.
That's a call to the human nature, yeah, to our solidarity, let's say, yes, and to
it is.
Yeah, you mentioned, I get AD, you're saying, which is audio description. You said SDH.
Audio description.
Yeah, SDH.
Yeah, SDH, it's subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing. Okay. I have to say I use it, but I would stop using it. In Poland, actually, it's now not called SDH anymore. It's called enhanced subtitles, because we do know that the audience for the enhanced subtitles is much bigger than people who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Okay. And another question, Laura from Buenos Aires joined us, and she's asking, what are the main technical barriers cinemas face when implementing audio description systems?
Technical barriers. Not so many anymore. I would say, again, the barrier is awareness about access, because if you want to implement access, well, no, I'm sorry, there is one barrier. The barrier is no accessible content. Because the technology is there are many apps that can be used. Some of them in some countries are completely free of charge for cinemas. It's just very often you do not have the audio description for the film, right? So what has been done in Poland, for example, the Polish Film Institute, if they co-finance a film, they oblige the producers to create audio description and same language subtitles. But then it's again a failure story that ends well. When they first introduced it, the producers would create audio description in SDH, and they would submit it to the founder, but they would not add it to the copy of the film. So in the next round, there was pressure from NGOs, and they said, no, not that you create AD, you have to add it to the distribution copy. They would, to one. So if you wanted to have an accessible screening, you would have to queue in line for this accessible copy to be sent to your cinema. And sometimes the distributors would charge the cinemas extra for an accessible copy. So we are now in round 3, when the regulations changed, and the Polish Film Institute says, no, every single copy has to have audio description and subtitles. And since in Poland there are now 2 apps for films, the next step is also, and then you have to distribute audio description for both apps to be available so that a person who goes to the cinema can choose. So I don't think there's much of a technical problem because the digital cinema is there. You can add multiple tracks to the copy. You can either hire headphones or buy headphones, and yes, you need money for this, but they are not crazy expensive anymore. Or you have an app. So the technical problem is not there anymore. The problem is, I think, more at the distribution level. And again, in Poland, yes, we have those regulations now for Polish-made films, but there's no regulation nowhere in Europe, as far as I know, for foreign films. So this hopefully should be regulated too, that, you know, any film that goes into the cinema is either dubbed or subtitled. I think there should be dubbed, subtitled, and audio described. And that would be a good solution.
And
Good
that would
job.
not be that expensive if it was thought about from the beginning and including in the production chain.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly, but I think Pablo, he has calculated it that the costs of all translation and access is like 1% of even less than the entire budget of the film. So, you know, the money, I do not buy the money argument.
I think, Anya, that we need to see more what's the word? Mainstreaming of accessibility. We don't need accessibility specialists so much. We need people who are in office jobs, let's say, who are producing lots of text or online text in particular.
Yeah.
They need to know about accessibility and they need to include it in their workflow. And this is not enough at the moment.
Yes.
I
think we need to train not only access experts, but we need to train filmmakers. We need to train theater students because they very often do not know that access exists. They're not trained. We need to train journalists about access so that when they produce, you know, videos that are posted online, so that they know they have to be made accessible. That's what we have to do.
One thing, I've got a question I want to ask you: the relationship between accessibility and universal design. How much do they overlap? How much are they different? You haven't mentioned universal design.
No, I haven't. It's a very good question, and there is a connection. We don't have enough time to talk about all the pros and cons of framing access as universal design. But indeed, there's even one of the organizations in Poland has something that they call universal design of culture. So how do you design culture or cultural experiences from the onset so that they are accessible? And they have divided it. Sorry, they have divided it into parts. So you would have the part that is sight, the part that is hearing, the part that is understanding, a part that is feeling. So it's like pillars. of an accessible experience. And then you also have movement. So they don't really talk about a type of disability anymore, but access in the area of sight, access in the area of hearing, access in the area of feeling and understanding. So there is an overlap with universal design, and we always discuss it in access management class. To understand access, you also have to understand universal design. Yes.
Thank you. Floriane, would you like to add some final comments?
Yeah, I was just thinking about with all you have said and all how much we've had a reduced vision of access in a way. What here in Spain, our future describers and subtitlers, they are still trained as translators. So what would you tell them? What can they bring to the profession with their university background, and what should they be aware of? What should they look at and include beyond what they have learned?
I think the first point is that if you work in audio description, and also if you provide subtitling for the deaf and hard of hearing, there is this concept in math which is called zero-sum game, that at the end everybody wins. So I would strongly advise you to not be only a describer who sits in front of your screen without any knowledge of people who you're working for, because otherwise you'll be just producing text. And I think audio description, at least for me, has this power that you are doing something that makes somebody happy or sad. Like the best experience I've ever had, and I always try to give it to my students, is we created AD together for the film festival, and they would go there, they would assist people who would use the audio description. And it is, for me, I would always, including now, have tears in my eyes when I think about, oh wow, they were, watching the Titanic and they cried. They did not see the screen. They were watching Indiana Jones and they were laughing. So I think you have an opportunity for a job that actually, when I started with AD, everyone asked like, yeah, why do you do it? But you don't cure cancer, right? If you're going to be a doctor, maybe cure cancer. And I said, yeah, okay, I don't cure cancer. But AD really it's a meaningful job. And I don't think all of us get a chance to have a meaningful job. And if you know your audience, I don't know, go and volunteer to an organization which advocates for blind people, or go and work in a disability-led organization, because otherwise you could be writing whatever audio description included. So this is my first advice I would give you. Be in touch with your audiences. It's rewarding for you, probably even more than it is for them. And then the second is, I think, if not all people are suited to be translators. I realized I'm not suited to be a translator, because I do enjoy my time alone in front of the screen, but not so much. So after a couple of years of doing voiceover and description, I knew I wanted to do something more. And I think Access allows you to do this. You can go out, you can be an Access manager, you can be an Access advisor. And it's a very multifaceted job that is, for me, one of the best jobs in the world. Not an easy one, but it's amazing. And I do think that people who study arts and humanities and people who study translations are very well suited for this job, because it's deeply at the core human job. It's about empathy, it's about understanding other people, and it's about mediating between people. And that's what you are learning as translators, even if you're not aware of that. That's what I think.
Thank you. I think that's the perfect way to.
And don't do Access only in theory. Don't. Even if you're researchers, don't do Access only in theory, well, unless you really enjoy theory and philosophy, fine. But even for this, you need to have a first-hand experience of Access and disability, I think.
Okay, Ania, Floriane, thank you. It's been a fascinating session. People are saying thank you in the chat. I'll make
Thank
sure
you so much for sticking with us for an hour in the evening.
I'll make sure that you get a copy of the chat. I'll also ask you, because you did mention one reference, but you didn't refer to it very precisely. I'll ask you to make 3 references, and we'll add them to the description in YouTube. Yeah? Because you've given lots of tips, but people might not know where to start. If maybe you've got some ideas for that, but I'm not going to ask you to go on longer now because we've gone
All
on.
right. I'm just going to send my email in the chat. If anyone wants to follow up, drop me a link, and I'd be happy to respond. Not today anymore, but tomorrow after 9.
Very kind of you, Ania. So we're going to bring this to an end, this session. Thank you once again to those of you, to Ania and Floriane especially, and also to those of you who've followed along online. And only remains to be said that this session, the recording of the session, will be online very soon in our YouTube channel. And the next capsule this season, the last one this season, will be a conversation on language engineering between Vicente Briva Iglesias and Maria Docampo, 2 specialists. I think we're going to be back to AI once again here on the 13th of May. The details are on our website. So once again, thank you for attending, and thank you to Marcos, who's in the technical room, has been making sure that it runs properly, this session. And hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.